Welcome everybody to tonight's launch of the revamped ISCAST journal. My name is Chris Mulheron. I'm the ISCAST Executive Director, and it's really my pleasure to welcome you tonight to this most auspicious occasion. We come together to meet from all different countries around the world. Here in Australia, we want to acknowledge the history of our country, a country that was not vacant when people arrived from other countries. We acknowledge injustices, and we all long to work together with the Indigenous people of Australia to work together for the betterment of everybody. Let me open in prayer. Lord God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, we worship you, we praise you, and we thank you. We thank you that we are able to meet together tonight. We thank you for ISCAST and the small things we at ISCAST are able to do to contribute to your glory, to contribute to our small part of your vineyard. Help us to enjoy fellowship tonight and to ponder anew the wonders of our faith in the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. Well, I'll tell you how tonight's going to go before I do a fraction more introducing. We're going to hear very briefly from lots of people. We're going to hear from the authors of the articles in the 2022 volume of Christian Perspectives on Science and Technology. And we're also going to hear from the editors, from Doru Kostake, from Mark Worthing, and from David Hooker. Before we do that, let me tell you briefly a little bit about the history of this journal. And I'm going to quote from John Pilbrow's History of ISCAST. Quote, "The origin of the ISCAST online journal goes back to ISCAST board discussions in 1999. The first steps taken towards a recognisable journal was the modest collection of articles that were uploaded onto the original website during 2001 to 2005. In 2009, the ISCAST online journal became known as Christian Perspectives on Science and Technology, also known as CPSAT. I note that by 2012, with regard to refereed journal articles, the acceptance rate was about 30%. End of quote. Key people involved in the beginning: Bruce Craven was editor from 2001 to 2014. John Pilbrow served as co-editor from 2012 to December 2014. The editors were assisted by the editorial team that worked under Dr. Helen Joint, who is also with us tonight. Other members of the editorial team were Patsy Robertson, Ross McMillan, Robert Joint, and Kathleen Ronaldson. I quote again from the ISCAST history, written at the time, written a number of years ago. While there has been in principle a commitment for some time to move CPSAT to a dedicated website, this has not as yet happened. Well, thanks very much to Jackie, who you met before. We do have a dedicated website. Jackie, why don't you show us the dedicated website where CPSAT articles are available to download for free in PDF format. Thanks, Jackie. We'll give you a minute or two to show us the website, which went, this version of the website went live just a couple of weeks ago. And there's an article also available as a PDF download. And now that we've concluded our first volume, Jackie will show us where you can download the whole of the 2022 volume of CPSAT. There it is, and a call for papers for this year's volume. Now let me move on. Well, let me move on to move my head, and I hope that by moving my head you will see we also have a printed version of the 2022 volume. It's a very impressive effort, and an effort that we need to thank our editors for, our authors for, and in terms of what it looks like, we need to thank Jackie Liu for. All of them have done an exceptional job in one short year of putting this journal on the global stage as a serious journal in the science and theology field. So thank you so much to all of those people. Now we're going to hear from a number of authors of articles in the 2022 volume of the journal. I need to note that Marcelo Lamartina was not able to provide a recording, but we are very thankful for his contribution. We're also going to hear from the three editors, Doru Kostake, who serves as ISCAST's research director and the coordinating editor of the journal, David Hooker, the reviews editor, who serves as ISCAST's publications director. And now the first speaker, we're going to hear a reflection from Mark Worthing, who is the co-editor of the journal. Thank you, Mark. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Chris, and congratulations, everyone, Doru, Chris, David, and Jackie, and others who've made this a reality. I'm not sure how I got the title co-editor. I'm really Doru's assistant editor, and it works like this. Doru gets a sticky question, and he says, I think this is going to work or not work. Am I right? or am I missing something? And I look at quick and I say, oh, that's interesting. But I was nervous when we started the project. I thought, can we get enough good quality articles to do this? And I probably would have been a little more impatient and say, oh, that'll do. But Doru was very firm and said only the highest quality gets through. And as the days and weeks went by, good quality articles didn't indeed start coming through. And I'm just so pleased with the creativity and depth of research and scholarship that we've been able to make available to a wider reading audience. It's been a pleasure to read the articles as they first came through, to observe the process, and to assist the team as with the official title co-editor. But I think we might update that to assistant editor at some point. So I just want to say a big thank you to everyone, and especially Doru, who's done a lot of work with individual authors, searching with a little bit of help from myself and others and finding good referees, and really helping make some very good articles, some quite great and spectacular articles through a lot of patience and working with people. So congratulations to everyone involved on getting this through to the first edition. And it's great to see the hardcover, Chris. Are all the editors getting a gift copy posted to them?
Absolutely.
Excellent. I thought that would be the case. Thank you.
What could I say? Let me introduce the first two author videos. First of all, we're going to hear from Marius Dorobantu and Charles Riding, after which Doru will speak to us.
Greetings. My name is Marius Dorobantu. I am a theologian based at the Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam in the Netherlands. My work is at the intersection of theological anthropology, science and technology, with a particular focus on the theological implications of developments in artificial intelligence, AI. And this is precisely what my article is about, the one recently published in the relaunched journal, Christian Perspectives on Science and Technology. In this article, I reflect on how our theological understanding of human distinctiveness and what it means that we are created in the image of God has shifted in the past few centuries in response to insights coming from evolutionary and cognitive science. What I argue is that developments in AI could bring additional challenges, but also opportunities for a science-engaged theology, because they might help us refine our theological self-understanding. AI could act, if you want, as a sort of negative mirror, showing us what we are not, and therefore altering what we perceive to be really the specificity of what it is to be a human being in the image of God. Reflecting theologically on the successes and failures of AI could lead to some tantalizing conclusions. For example, it seems that our linguistic or rational logical abilities, which we've long regarded as key features that distinguish us from non-human animals, may not be that typically human after all, because machines seem to master them relatively easily. Instead, categories like vulnerability, sentience, relationality, and embodiment could prove much more important for human distinctiveness than, for example, IQ. I've been thinking about these issues for quite a while, but recently, with the recent breakthroughs in AI, for example, ChatGPT, these things have suddenly acquired more urgency. This is why I was happy to have the article accepted by the journal Christian Perspectives on Science and Technology. I should add a word of praise for the quality of the peer review process. I received valuable suggestions from the editors and the reviewers. So the published article is a significantly improved version of the draft I initially submitted. Communication with the editors was also seamless, really a pleasure to work with. And I was deeply honored to learn that ArtThink, the Australian Theology Research Foundation Incorporated, decided to award my paper a prize for one of the best articles in this inaugural issue. I'm grateful to the foundation for this prize, which means a lot to me, especially at a relatively early stage in my career. I take this to be also a signal that reflecting on this new technology is a fruitful theological endeavor. And this is why it is a joy to see a quality academic journal that focuses precisely on these topics being relaunched. Thank you.
G'day, I'm Charles Riding, currently retired in Melbourne. My article is Faith, Deuteronomy 18, 21-22 and the Scientific Method. I've always been intrigued by the interrelationship between the physical sciences and Christianity. This particular article draws from three considerations. First, it reacts to the claim by atheists that science is founded on facts and facts only, on hard data and solid evidence which were checked and verified by the scientific method. Religions, on the other hand, were only founded on faith without any supporting evidence or even against the evidence. I got excited when I realised that the scientific method has exactly the same meta-method or meta-methodology as the test of a false prophet in Deuteronomy 18, 21-22. Namely, see what the prophet or scientific theory predicts, observe the outcome, and if it does not happen as predicted, then that prophet or that scientific hypothesis is wrong. This fits Karl Popper's theory of falsification. Popper's philosophy showed that the scientific method is circular reasoning, that it starts with the theory's predictions and ends with comparing those predictions with the experiment. Therefore, it can never verify or prove any theory or prophet correct. It can only show if that theory or prophet is consistent or inconsistent. If it is inconsistent, that is, the prediction does not happen, then the theory is incorrect. It has been falsified. If it gives the right prediction, it only shows that the theory is consistent. It cannot tell if it is consistently right or consistently wrong. A step of faith is still required. It also became obvious that even before you use the scientific method, you need to believe it is valid. You need to have faith in it to use it. Thus, we see that beliefs or convictions permeate scientists' use of the scientific method, just as they permeate all religions. Finally, Deuteronomy 18 and other biblical passages prove that critical thinking is embedded in the faith used by both scientists in the scientific method and also by religious believers. Thank you.
Well, thank you to both Marius and Charles Riding for offering those videos. Next, we're going to hear from Doru, and after that, Doru will introduce the next two videos.
Thank you, Chris. I think it'll be interesting to go through some chronology and a list of concrete details. So in April 2021, during my interview for the job of ISCAST Research Director, I suggested that we should revive the journal, and I heard at the time that this was actually the plan. So it was a very great, fortunate coincidence, let's call it. So May 2021, I submitted the grant application to ArtThink, the Australian Research Theology Foundation, receiving significant funds for the journal's new website, for the registration for DOIs, digital object identifiers, and 3 prizes for the best articles of the inaugural edition of the relaunched journal. In June and August 2021, we had several meetings of the ad hoc journal committee, including Dr. David Hooker, the Reverend Professor Roger Lewis, the Reverend Dr. Chris Mulheron, and the Reverend Dr. Mark Wordin. By the way, Mark, thank you for all those praises. That's a very good encouragement for me, but I don't work on my own, and you did a lot of work. From September 2021, we sent out invitations to potential members of the journal's advisory board. The board was constituted by the end of the year, including 14 academics from Aotearoa, New Zealand, 1, Australia, 6, Great Britain, 4, and the USA, 3. Sadly, one board member, Professor Tom McLeish, moved on to the Lord earlier this year. In his stead, the ad hoc committee elected Professor Gail Woloshak, who kindly agreed to serve. Throughout the second half of 2021, held by Ms. Jackie Liu's flyers, I have sent out a call for papers, and article submissions began to arrive in December. In the first half of 2022, Jackie and her colleagues managed to set up a provisional website for the journal, immediately populated by book reviews through the diligence of the book reviews editor, Dave Hooker. Given the rigors of double-blind peer review, the first accepted articles were published towards mid-2022, and by the end of the year, a total of 8 articles were published after peer review and revisions, sometimes accompanied by substantial editorial advice. The first volume being finalized by the end of 2022, I was able to obtain from the Australian National Library 2 ISSNs for the digital edition and for the printed issue, respectively. Once the ISSNs came live, I have then applied to Crossref, an important indexing agency for the journal's DOI, with Jackie ascribing individual DOIs retrospectively to all the materials published in the 2022 volume. The articles are also accompanied by the author's no conflict declarations and by the dates of reception, acceptance, and publication. These, together with the rigorous processes of double-blind peer review, are meant to secure the status of the ISCAST journal as a world-standard academic outlet. The 8 published articles are by scholars from Aotearoa, New Zealand, 2, Australia, 3, Italy, 1, the Netherlands, 1, and the USA, 1. The articles treat, as the authors tell us tonight, a range of topics from the history of faith and science, including the contributions of the regretted ISCAST fellow Bruce Craven, to artificial intelligence and semiotics, and from scriptural insights to metaphysics and evolutionary biology. Given the avalanche of submissions, Mark and I, helped by many reviewers from Australia, Great Britain, Greece, and the USA, had to be very selective about accepting articles for publication. I take this opportunity to express our heartfelt gratitude to the reviewers, whose expert input is of utmost importance, and to the invaluable guidance of our International Advisory Board. We are equally grateful to the proofreaders, many of whom are ISCAST members, who checked the text before publication. The editors are also thankful for Jackie Liu's excellent production of the journal's complete first volume, digital and in print, as well as for the elegant website and promotional materials. Last but not least, we are profoundly grateful to the authors and to the journal's many helpers and supporters. We hope that the editorial team of the journal's initial series are proud of this continuation of their pioneering efforts. And now we're going to hear from 2 more authors, Graham Finlay and Chris Howell. Enjoy.
I'm Graham Finlay, and I have 40 years of experience in cancer research and in the teaching of scientific pathology at the University of Auckland. And whilst a cancer researcher, I learned that you can define the evolution of cancer by the way the cells progressively accumulate mutations. And that led me into a reading of biological evolution, because you can define the evolution of species by the way that species also accumulate mutations. Interestingly, you can define the evolution of manuscripts in the biblical science of textual criticism by the way that ancient manuscripts can be shown to accumulate textual variants. We could call those mutations as well. Now, I'm concerned by the way in which many people hold the biblical doctrine of creation against a scientific theory of evolution. But these examples I've given indicate that they share the commonality of being aspects of history. And hence the title of the paper that I wrote up for the ISCAST journal, Evolution as History, Phylogenetics of Genomes and of Manuscripts. So as Christians, we hold joyfully to both biological evolution and to the doctrine, because history is an integral part of divine creation. I have thoroughly enjoyed working with the staff at Christian Perspectives on Science and Technology. Editorial helpfulness, the rigor of quality control as the article moved towards publication, the impeccable typesetting, the attractiveness of the final product. And also I'm very excited by the scope of CPSAT, who in an age of misinformation seek to reach as many people as possible with quality articles describing the real interaction between Christian theology and science. And finally, I would like to express my great appreciation to the Australian Theological Research Foundation, Incorporated, for their commendation of my art and their very generous award made to me. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Christopher Howell. I am based out of North Carolina. I teach right now at Elon University, where I'm an adjunct in religious studies. I did my PhD at Duke in American religion, and I focused mostly on religion and science, so my dissertation there was on history of the intelligent design movement, which I'm currently turning into a book for NYU Press. The article that I wrote for Christian Perspectives in Science and Technology was called Between Darwin and Dostoevsky, The Syntheses of Theodosius Dobzhansky, which was an interesting piece to work on because I started it actually as a series of popular posts for Public Orthodoxy, a popular peer-reviewed blog run out of Fordham University here in the US. And I was contacted by Doru Kostaki to ask if I could repurpose it into an article. And so it was a good opportunity. I was able to expand and develop and add more information and fix some things that I thought needed to be fixed. And then I got these excellent peer review comments on it that really helped me deepen, address additional concerns, bring in more ideas, and help refine the whole piece. And I think it really improved and made it a lot better. So I was very grateful for the opportunity to do that. The article itself turned out to be kind of an interesting meditation on Dobzhansky, who was an important figure in evolutionary biology whose religious views are often overlooked. There's been a lot of study, of course, on his scientific views because he was one of the most important people in the evolutionary synthesis the modern synthesis for evolution. But his political views, which he wrote a lot about in his popular books, and then also his religious views, which he did keep to himself a lot, but would also publish in his popular books, haven't been analyzed nearly as much. And so what I tried to do was figure out ways to sort of synthesize them together, because one of the things that most interested him was an attempt throughout his life to try to counteract and resist the balkanization, he called it, of different fields in academia, between science and humanities and philosophy and biology and so on. He was interested in many different fields and really wanted to put them in conversation with each other. And I thought it was interesting to analyze that, especially in context of what is being done here at the journal. It was a good opportunity, and I was really happy with the way it turned out, and I think it looks great, and it really has been a wonderful experience. So I can't thank anyone enough for helping me through it. It's really been a pleasure to see it come out the way that it has. So thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's a privilege to be able to say a few words as the book reviews editor of CPSAT. I'll just give a brief overview of the year that's been. We've had 14 reviews for this particular volume. The range of topics is really fascinating. We've had topics on miracles, medical ethics, evolution, climate change, transhumanism, spirituality and creation, explaining God's providence, the impact of science experimentation, science in Protestantism, eschatology, and death and the fall, to name just some. I'm really pleased with the momentum that we've generated for this volume, despite the fact that publishers can be hard to chase. It can be quite challenging and slow to procure a book sometimes, but things are moving along nicely. And I really would like to thank the authors of the reviews for the fun process of just getting the reviews and getting them polished and getting them ready. Looking ahead, well, obviously we want more books. We want to keep generating those lists that we've been emailing out. And I think we need more on the overlap of faith with technology. ISCAST is, of course, science and technology engaging with the Christian faith. And as technology penetrates more and more the fields of biology and anthropology, so for example, AI, which is rapidly and very much coming to the fore now, we need Christian engagement with that. I'd also like to say, if you know of someone who isn't an ISCAST fellow and who you think may be a good book reviewer for journal-bound reviews, please let me know. We'd love to add that to our database of reviewers. Just in my remaining few minutes, I'd like to open the topic up a little and talk more about the general matter of the value of books. Many of us here have written academic books and love reading them. We value them highly. Why? Well, they stimulate us, they correct us, they even excite us, they educate us, they draw us into debates, they build collaborations and improve our own writing. They give us new perspectives. They may even give us outrageous opinions which provoke us to sharpen our own thoughts. And that's all great stuff. But I believe there's a deeper value in books and, of course, the book reviews that give us the access to those books. The question of the deeper value of books brings to mind a key question a notable philosopher of science asked, and I believe answered. Imre Lakatos sought to answer the question, how does real knowledge grow? And applied that to the scientific enterprise. And later, of course, Nancy Murphy constructed a solid case for applying Lakatosian approach to theology. So the growth of real knowledge is not just opinions and perspectives and viewpoints. It's the gradual unfolding of a truer and more reliable understanding of God and his world, both in theology and science. So to me, this is a huge privilege to be a part of. And I would say that books are actually part of that growth in real knowledge. They have this deeper value. So bring on the book reviews. And I would like to commend the current book reviews to you. And I encourage all to join the growing number of book reviewers. Thank you. Now we're going to hear from more authors, namely Carolyn King, who has a audio message for us, John Pilbrow, and followed by Stephen Amies. Thank you.
My name is Carolyn King. I'm sorry I can't be there at the launch, but here is my message for you to say why I am so delighted that to have discovered your organisation, because it really does seem to me to be a really important and much needed bridge between science and theology. I've spent a lifetime on studying mustelids, that is stoats and weasels and ferrets. I started as a grad student trapping weasels in Oxford to do my PhD, and then I emigrated to New Zealand in 1971, and I've worked all my life on the ecology of these animals in New Zealand. At the University of Waikato since 1995, I've taught vertebrate zoology and evolution and have always been very impressed by the fact that I've never been able to find any contradiction between the science and my Anglican religion, because they are mutually compatible responses to my work. I have no problem of putting them together. My ISCAST paper, which was called Genesis 1 to 3 as a resource for 21st century faith, provides answers to questions that have puzzled me all my life on how to love God in the natural world of animals. I conclude that both biology and religion deal in invisible realities. They're the same in that respect, but different in the fact that those invisible realities are critically important to our lives in different ways, and both of them are important to understand and to put together. They need to be interpreted not just visibly, but interpreted through intelligent and dynamic models, and critical realism and serious and respectful study of the original sources. I always grieve when science and theology fail to understand each other's literature. It confuses students enormously when well-meaning but unconfirmable ideas like this painting, which is on the side of a Christian school in Auckland, of Noah taking a ride on a horse in the process of building his ark, which is in the background there, and meeting a dinosaur on the way. These are completely incompatible ideas, and it must confuse students enormously. And cartoonists love to make fun of those kind of ideas. And the result of it was that the original ideas, which are in themselves important to understand, are understood only as criticas of each other. And the original caption to this cartoon was, "How can any normal, rational, intelligent human being believe that we came from either Adam as talking to God or as from an ape?" They're both completely criticas of the actual ideas. I've found liberation from this confusion through a deeply informed biblical faith and evolutionary biology. The story of the six-day creation does not contradict science. It's not about material origins. It's actually the text of a festival celebrating God's authority and care for us and his creation of the world as a place for humans to live. We don't need to see this as a contradiction, but we don't see that real message from Genesis 1 until we put it in the context of a lost world in which it was written. And at the same time, neurobiology offers a much kinder interpretation of the Eden story. Understanding the evolution of human brain is a way of overcoming centuries of guilt about the idea of transferred inherited generations of guilt from Adam. It's not like that if you understand how the human brain was comprised of inherited structures from going right back to the early reptiles. It removes all problems about the idea of original sin. It actually puts it into a really much more important and reasonable context. So that was what my paper was about, and I thank you to the organisation for being so generous to recognise my first paper in the ISCAST journal. I'm astonished at your generosity in providing the prize, and I assure you that this paper won't be the last one. Here's a list of references which might help you understand my previous work. Thanks to you all.
Hi, I'm Stephen Ames. I'm the author of the paper From Physics to Metaphysics, A New Way. Professor Brian Cox, at the end of his 2021 BBC series Universe, rightly praises the scope and detail of our scientific knowledge of the vast universe, though we are located on this mere speck of a planet. The contrast between the speck and its vast context is one route to big questions, such as, why is there anything at all? Or why are we here? Cox takes these not as philosophical or theological questions, but as scientific questions, because in his view, they are questions about nature. My paper does two things. Firstly, it shows that the natural sciences cannot answer these big questions. The point is simple. Any scientific answer will necessarily posit something as already existing to do the explaining. Logically, therefore, it is unable to explain why there is anything at all. Across the great breadth and detail of his BBC presentation on the universe, Cox is scientifically excellent, but on this point is philosophically mistaken. Secondly, my paper offers an answer to these big questions, not a scientific answer, but a metaphysical one, entirely friendly to the sciences. My answer draws on the work of the late Professor Victor Stenger, atheist and physicist, for many years the professor of physics at the University of Hawaii. In his 2006 book, The Comprehensible Cosmos, Stenger mathematically derived all the great laws of physics, or nearly all. One, he didn't, namely the second law of thermodynamics. This is a tour de force, right? The derivation may be shown to entail an oddity. The oddity is that the laws of physics operating from the instant after the Big Bang can be derived from two premises. One is well-known physical knowledge, for example, like electric and magnetic fields, physical knowledge which does not presuppose the laws. The second premise refers to something that shows up billions of years after the Big Bang, what Stenger calls the principle of point of view invariance. This is the principle that physicists are seeking to make models of the operation of the universe not dependent on the standpoints of the physicists conducting their inquiries. This paper shows that the natural sciences logically cannot explain this oddity. And this justifies seeking an explanation beyond the resources of the natural sciences. And the seeking is guided by the question, what must minimally be assumed to explain the oddity? This turns out to be an argument to God, the God who creates the universe ex nihilo for a purpose that arises within the argument, not imposed upon it. The universe created by God operates according to the laws of physics in order that the universe may be known through empirical inquiry by embodied rational agents. This argument leaves for another time an account of why God would be so interested in such empirical inquiry taking place in this created universe. Stenger cites the famous statement of Einstein that the most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is so comprehensible. This paper makes a start on making the comprehensibility of the universe comprehensible. An objection to this argument is that Stenger thought of his principle of point of view invariance as a methodological principle, not an ontological principle. My paper rebuts this and other objections, and I hope you enjoy reading it.
My name is John Pilbrow, and from 2006 to 2009, I served as president of ISCAST. I've been involved in thinking about issues at the interface of faith and science for more than 6 decades, and I readily acknowledge my debt to the Research Scientist Christian Fellowship, or RSCF, firstly in Oxford, and then from 1965 to 1978 in Melbourne. Sadly, there was little coordinated activity in Australia at the faith-science interface for about 10 years, until ISCAST got underway in the late 1980s. It has been my privilege to have been associated with ISCAST since 1991. When long-standing ISCAST fellow Bruce Craven died early last year, it seemed a good idea to write a tribute for the ISCAST website, where I also referred to his loyal participation for about 20 years in the local RSCF. Bruce, a distinguished and senior mathematician at the University of Melbourne, would never stand for shoddy thinking or poor logic, and in many ways he was the conscience of RSCF and later ISCAST discussions. Bruce, as founding editor of the ISCAST online journal from 2000 to 2014, laid the foundation for an academically respectable publication. However, by around 2011, he was finding the job difficult, so I became associate editor for about 3 years. But towards the end of 2014, we both felt it was time to step down, and our swan song was a joint editorial in December 2014, which you can still find on the website. Last year, I was asked to provide a deeper reflection on Bruce's thought as expressed in several articles he had published in the ISCAST online journal during the early 2000s. I chose the title Bruce Craven, Contrarian or Questioning Thinker. Why did I pose the question as to whether Bruce was a contrarian thinker? It was because I'd observed how at RSCF and ISCAST meetings, Bruce would inevitably challenge the speaker with at least one deep and profound question. Never satisfied with simply believing something because someone had said it, he pressed us all to think deeply about reality as Christians, and he contributed significantly to many of us by forcing us to sharpen up our own views and understanding. Was Bruce Craven really a contrarian thinker or something else? I concluded correctly, I think, that he was really a questioning thinker, someone whose challenging and insightful questioning we continue to need today.
Hello, I'm very happy to be able to address a thought to everyone, and I thank those who have allowed me to participate. For some years now, I've been conducting research that blends together at least three disciplines: semiotics, Greek patristics, and the philosophy of language. Working at the intersection of this knowledge is not easy, because one runs the risk of saying things that appear from time to time too trivial or too technical. But I decided to take this risk because it is worth it. The Greek fathers have much to tell us, but we must know how to question them. We must learn how to formulate questions properly. Otherwise, they will not answer. Plato said that the written discourse is weak precisely because it answers everyone the same thing, while the oral discourse, that which can defend itself, is capable of harmonizing its answers to the desire of the questioners. The church fathers are not like just a written discourse. They are rather the living word of the church, a word in dialogue with the philosophy and with the sciences of their own times. How and what to ask them? I think semiotics and the philosophy of language can help formulate the right questions. For example, the fathers ask exquisitely semiotic questions when interpreting the linguistic arts of the triune God, the speech arts of the triune God. This God, who manifests himself as a speaker, who says I, is involved in continuous processes of communication, of enunciation. Moreover, this God is the first person speaking of himself, communicating his vision of life. He self-expresses himself as living life, and in doing so, he also expresses a theory, an ontology, and in his song, he draws an anthropology. I was talking about these things with Doru Kostaki, to whom I am bound by a deep respect, and I was asking him how these convictions of mine could be shared with other scholars, not only philosophers, but also scientists, biologists, anthropologists. He then told me about the journal Christian Perspectives on Science and Technology. And I realized that this was the place to meet other scholars interested in dialogue between the distinct fields of knowledge. Editing the text took a long time. Trying to express oneself for an educated and diverse audience is not easy. But at every stage of this work, I was supported with love and passions. So I have many limitations, indeed, I have great friends. I think that what Christian Perspectives on Science and Technology is doing is only at the beginning, and that the results will be seen later. I envision a new generation of church fathers, men and women capable of combining science with wisdom, analytical, logical thinking with the narrative thinking that all scriptures employ. I think the world needs this alliance between science and faith, which are the two breaths with which we human creatures can breathe, and without breath feel part of the universe and the one life of the cosmos. Thank you, my friends, for making it possible for me to be one of you.
Thank you so much to those people who contributed their videos and their sound and slides, Carolyn. Well, it's my job to wind up our evening. I was going to make a sort of announcement, although that announcement has already been foreshadowed. I was going to announce the three winners of the ArtFink Awards, the Australian Research Theological Foundation Awards. As Doru has said, we're very grateful to ArtFink for giving us the money to be able to make these awards. And as you already know, the three winners are Marius Dorobantu, Carolyn King, and Graham Finlay. I should make a special note also to thank Graham for his gracious donation of his prize money to be used for another award for the best postgraduate or early career article in the 2023 volume of CPSAT. I'd like to thank all those again who have already been thanked, but let me do it again. The editorial committee, the advisory board, Doru, who you've heard from, Dave, who you've heard from, Mark, who you've heard from. Now, let me embarrass Jackie a little bit and ask Jackie if she would turn on her video and spotlight herself. Jackie, too, has done an extraordinary job putting together the text, the graphics, the flyers, all that we see when we look at it. And we might also spotlight somebody. Helen was one of the giants of CPSAT in those first years, decades. Thank you, Helen. Thank you, John. Thank you to all those other people. Well, to quote Newton, on whose shoulders we stand. We hope that you feel the revamped ISCAST journal does you credit. Thank you for your efforts in the past. We'll wind up there, but you're welcome to stay online afterwards and chat a little bit more. But let me formally close with the blessing given to Aaron and his sons to bless the people of Israel. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.